Look at your hand for a moment. 5 fingers. Now imagine you have no word for 5. You can see them, all of them, perfectly clearly. You just cannot say how many there are. You have a word for 1, you have a word for 2, and after that, you have only one more word, and that word is many. 3 fingers, many. 8 fingers, many. Everything past 2 is just a heap with no edges. Erase the rest of it too. The clock on your wall, the number on your door, the page where you write things down. Erase the very idea that an amount can be a word you carry in your head. This was the world for a great many of the humans who ever lived, tens of thousands of years ago. Their languages had 1 and 2 and many and nothing else. A few peoples on earth still live this way today. It was never about being slow or simple. They were as sharp as you are. They simply lived in a world that had not yet invented one of the strangest tools our species would ever make: the number. And here is the problem that should make you lean in. Those people had to count. Their lives depended on it. So how do you count when you have no numbers? How do you make sure everyone came home when you have no word for how many left? That is the story. And the way they solved it is one of the cleverest things human beings have ever done. Picture a morning, long before cities, long before farms. The sky is still gray. A group of hunters is leaving the camp, slipping out one after another into the cold half-light, spears in hand. They will be gone all day. And here is the quiet danger nobody back at the fire can shake. If one of them does not come back, if a man is lying hurt somewhere out in that vast landscape, the time to find him is short. A night alone in the open can kill. So someone has to know if everyone returns. But no one in that camp has a word for how many men just walked into the dark. So watch what one of them does. As the hunters file out, an older woman by the fire bends down and picks up a small stone for each man who passes. 1 man, 1 stone. She is not counting. She could not tell you the number if you asked. But when the last hunter is gone, she is holding a little pile of pebbles that is exactly, perfectly as large as the group that left. The stones have become the men. All day she keeps them, and when the sun drops and the hunters come trudging back, she sets a stone down for each one. 1 man, 1 stone. If her hand empties at the same moment the last man steps into the firelight, everyone is home, and she lets out a breath. But if the men stop coming and a stone is still sitting in her palm, then she knows, instantly, with no number at all, that someone is still out there. And they go back out to look while there is still light. She never needed to count. She needed 2 things to match. That simple idea, one thing standing for one thing, is the seed of all counting, and it solved problems that look impossible without numbers. Think of the herd. A family keeps animals or follows a wild herd they live on, and a single one wandering off is food and wealth lost into the hills. But a herd is a moving, shifting crowd of bodies. You cannot count them. By the time your eye crawls to the far side, the near side has shuffled and turned. So the herder does not count the animals. Every evening he carries a small pouch of pebbles, one stone for every animal in his care, and at dusk he matches them, stone to beast, beast to stone. The night a goat is missing, there is a stone left over in his hand. Not a number that dropped, a small, cold stone with no animal to match it, telling him to go searching the slopes before dark. He was carrying a copy of his whole flock in a bag, but pebbles spill. A pile gets kicked over in the night, scattered, mixed with ordinary stones, and the count is gone. For the things that truly mattered, the things you needed to keep and trust over many days, people needed something that would hold still. And so, an astonishingly long time ago, a human being sat down with a bone and a sharp edge of stone and made a mark. In a cave on the edge of the Lubumbo Mountains in the far south of Africa, archaeologists digging in the 1970s found a small piece of bone about the length of your finger. It was the leg bone of a baboon, and cut into one edge of it were notches, not random scratches, careful, deliberate cuts made one at a time by a hand that is gone so deep into the past it is hard to even hold the distance in your mind. That bone is around 40,000 years old, maybe more. It is the oldest counting object human beings have ever found. Sit with what one of those notches really is. It is the pebble trick, made permanent. Each cut stands for one of something. One animal taken, one visitor, one night gone by. Picture the person who made it, sitting close to a low fire as the dark presses in, drawing the stone edge across the bone, adding one more mark to a row of marks. Maybe they could not say the total out loud. Maybe there was no word in their whole language for how many notches were on that bone. It did not matter. The bone remembered for them. Every mark was a real thing that had happened, frozen into the bone, waiting there to be counted again by anyone who ran a fingertip slowly along the edge. And there is something almost haunting about that little bone because of how many notches it carries. The number of cuts is very close to the number of nights between one full moon and the next. Many who have studied it believe it was a way of following the moon. A notch cut each night in the dark, tracking the one great clock that hung over every ancient life, the only reliable calendar anyone had, turning slowly in the sky. Imagine needing to know how many nights until the moon is full and round again, until the season shifts, until the herds move and the rains come. You cannot hold all those nights in your head. So you hold one night at a time in a bone, and you let the bone do the remembering. There was one more counting tool, and you have been looking at it this whole time. Your hands. 10 things you carry everywhere that fold down one at a time, perfect for matching one finger to one thing. All across the ancient world, people counted by touching them off, but in some places, it went far past 10. On the island of New Guinea, peoples built ways of counting that climbed right up the body. You would start at the little finger of one hand and move along the fingers, then to the wrist, the elbow, the shoulder, up to the ear, the eye, the nose, and back down the other side. Each spot on the body was a fixed step in an order everyone knew by heart. A number was not a word at all. It was a place on your own body. To tell someone how many, you did not speak a number. You pointed to where you stopped. A child learned the amounts by learning the journey across the body, the same path every time. so that two people who shared no number words at all could still touch their own shoulders and agree exactly on how many. Now here is the turn in this whole story, the thing those ancient people did without ever knowing how enormous it was. Go back to the woman with her pebbles and the herder with his pouch. Their counting only lived in the moment. The stones in the hand answered the question right now, tonight, and then the stones went back to being just stones. But the person who cut that first notch into bone did something different, something no creature on earth had ever done before. They took a thought out of their own head, and they set it down in the world where it would wait. The number of nights, the number of animals, the number of anything no longer had to live trapped inside a single mind, where it would fade and blur and die when that person died. It could sit in a bone by the fire and be true tomorrow and the day after and long after the hand that carved it was gone. That is the moment everything quietly changed. Because once a person could store a count outside their own skull, they could do things no human had ever managed. They could track a whole winter's worth of food against the days still left until spring, marking the supply, watching the marks, and they could see the danger coming weeks before the storehouse ran bare, instead of discovering it too late in the cruel last stretch of cold when nothing grows and no one can hunt. They could follow the moon across a whole year. They could keep a record of the herd that outlasted any one shepherd's memory. They could hold the dead and the newborn, the seasons, the journeys, all of it in marks that did not forget. You can feel the weight of what was at stake whenever the counting failed. The herder who got distracted and never noticed the leftover stone until a goat was simply gone, taken by the hills or by a predator in the night. The family that did not track the drying meat and the stored roots against the long months ahead and found the pile vanishing too fast somewhere deep in winter, with the worst of the cold still to come and nothing left to do but wait and hope and go hungry. Counting was not a game in that world. A count kept well meant the group ate and survived. A count lost meant someone, somewhere, did not. And so the stones, the notches, the fingers along the arm were not clumsy little tricks. They were some of the most important tools any human being carried, as vital in their way as the spear or the fire. So look at your hand again. 5 fingers and a clean little word for it that sits ready in your mind. A word you can hold and add and split and pass to a child with no stones in your palm and no bone by your side. That word feels like the most ordinary thing in the world. It is not. It is one of the oldest and hardest inventions our species ever fought its way to. Built up across tens of thousands of years out of a pile of river pebbles, a row of marks on the leg bone of a baboon, and the steady touch of a fingertip moving up the arm. Somewhere far back in the dark, a person sat by a fire and looked down at a hand exactly like yours, and saw 5 fingers, and had no way at all to say it. So they reached for a small stone, and in that tiny, patient motion, one quiet thing matched to one quiet thing, they began the long, astonishing climb that ends with every number you will ever count.